Capricorn, Capricorn. The words that cross an invisible line. You said something. It might have been a casual phrase, a joke, a comment you didn't even think twice about. But when you looked at the Capricorn in front of you, something changed. Their gaze became empty, distant, as if a door had closed from the inside, and you don't even know what it was. Capricorn has an invisible line, an emotional boundary you don't see until you cross it. And when you cross it, there's no warning, no screaming, no drama, just an icy silence that says, "You've just lost my trust, and I'm not going to explain myself twice." Most people don't even realize when this happens. They keep talking, laughing, thinking everything is normal. But Capricorn has already made a decision, a silent, calculated, and irreversible decision. There are specific words, seemingly harmless phrases, that trigger something deep within Capricorn. It's not about exaggerated sensitivity. It's about fundamental values being disregarded. It's about realizing, in a single sentence, that you don't understand who they are. And here's the scariest part. You may have crossed that line without knowing it. That comment about their ambition, that comparison you made, that time you innocently questioned their loyalty. For you, it was just talk. For Capricorn, it was confirmation that you don't deserve access to their inner world. In this video, I'm going to reveal exactly what those words are, which phrases sound like alarm bells in the Capricorn mind, and most importantly, why these words have so much power over a sign that seems so rational and controlled. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This kind of in-depth content about the zodiac signs only reaches you because of your support. And believe me, you'll want to save this video to watch it again. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever felt this way without being able to explain it? That moment when you realized you said something wrong, but the person didn't explain what it was, just walked away. Let's find out exactly what happened. To understand why certain words have so much power over Capricorn, you first need to understand how this sign processes information. Respect. And when I say respect, I'm not talking about formality or hierarchy. I'm talking about something much deeper. Recognition of fundamental values. Capricorns build their entire identity around a few essential pillars: work, loyalty, consistency, integrity, and responsibility. These are not just values they admire. They are the foundation of who they are. When you meet a Capricorn, you're meeting someone who has decided, often from a young age, that actions speak louder than words, that commitment is sacred, that trust is built over time, not with promises. And here's the crucial detail. Capricorns don't explain this to you. They simply live this way and expect that if you truly know them, you'll understand. Think of Capricorn as a guardian of sacred territory. On the outside, things are cordial, professional, and functional. But there's a door that leads to the inner territory, where their vulnerabilities, fears, and true hopes reside. This door has no sign, no instructions. And Capricorn will never give you a map saying, "These are the rules for entering." But there are rules. Invisible but absolute. And when you say certain words, you're not just talking. You're revealing whether or not you understand those fundamental values. You're showing whether or not you deserve to be on that other side of the door. This trait comes from painful experiences accumulated throughout life. Capricorns, especially when younger, are often seen as old at heart. They mature quickly. They take on responsibilities early. And often, they are ridiculed for it. "Why are you so serious?" "Relax, you work too much." "Don't you know how to have fun?" For someone who hears this repeatedly, these phrases are not just casual comments. They are signs that people don't understand what motivates them. Worse, these are signs that people undervalue what they consider essential. And here's where the wound forms. Capricorns learn that showing who they really are, someone who values structure, discipline, building something lasting, makes them a target for criticism or misunderstanding. Then they stop explaining. They stop justifying themselves. And they simply begin to observe. Does this person understand who I am? Or will they be just another one who judges me without understanding? Outwardly, this trait appears mature. Capricorns are seen as people who don't take insults lying down, who have clear boundaries, and who don't waste time with those who don't value them. And that is indeed admirable. But what few people realize is the internal conflict that this posture creates. On one hand, Capricorn wants authentic connections. They want to be deeply understood. They want to be able to let their guard down and be vulnerable without fear of judgment. On the other hand, each negative experience reinforces the belief that it's safer to keep your distance, that it's better to be respected than to be known. And so they live in this delicate balance, getting close enough to build connections, but always with that invisible line protecting what is most precious to them. How many times have you wanted to completely trust someone, but a part of you whispered, "Wait. Observe a little longer. See if this person really understands you before opening up completely"? If you're a Capricorn, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you aren't a Capricorn, but you have one in your life, now you're starting to understand. The words you use aren't just words. They're tests. Tests you don't even know you're taking. And when you fail, the door closes. Now let's look at the contrast that defines Capricorn. The difference between what the world sees and what happens inside. Outwardly, Capricorns project impeccable control. They seem unflappable. When you say something that crosses the line, they don't yell. They don't make a scene. Often, they don't even change their facial expression. They just carry on. The conversation continues. The day goes on. Everything seems normal. And that's why most people don't realize they've crossed the line. Because Capricorn is a master at not showing the immediate impact. But that doesn't mean there was no impact. Inside, when you cross that line, it's as if a mental file is opened and permanently marked. This person doesn't understand. And that file is never truly deleted. It may be archived. It may lie quietly in the back of your mind. But it's there. And every new interaction with you will be filtered through that information. Imagine a security system with access levels. When you meet a Capricorn, you have level 1 access, superficial, cordial, functional. With time, trust, and consistency, you can move up to level 2, 3, until you reach the level where Capricorn truly opens up, where they show vulnerability, where they let you see who they are when they're not building or performing. But when you cross the line with the wrong words, you don't just lose your current level of access. You're permanently demoted. And Capricorns never tell you that. They simply start treating you differently, more distant, more superficial, more protected. And here's what makes this emotionally exhausting for Capricorns. They have to continue interacting with you normally. If you're a coworker, family member, or friend in a social circle, they can't simply disappear. So they maintain their composure. They maintain cordiality. They keep the relationship functional. But inside, something died. The hope for depth. The possibility of real intimacy. This erosion is insidious because it is invisible. Capricorn continues to show up, continues to be reliable, continues to fulfill their social or professional obligations. And from the outside, everything seems fine. But internally, they are constantly managing. What can I share with this person? How far can I trust them? How do I maintain emotional distance without seeming rude? Do you know what's most painful about all of this? Often, the person who crossed the line has no idea. They keep trying to get closer to Capricorn. They keep sharing things, making invitations, hoping for reciprocity. And they get confused when Capricorn always seems too busy or too focused to connect deeply. Why are you so closed off? Why don't you open up more? Capricorn thinks, but never says, because you've already shown me that you won't understand. And I'm not going to waste my vulnerability on someone who doesn't know how to value it. If you're a Capricorn, you know the weight of this. How many times have you wanted to explain to someone? You said something that showed me who you really are. And now I can't help but see it. But you don't explain, because explaining seems too vulnerable. It seems like giving power to someone who has already shown that they don't deserve that power. So you just distance yourself, silently, and carry the weight of maintaining all these masks, all these levels of access, all this complex emotional architecture. And if you're not a Capricorn, but you have one in your life who always seems to keep a certain distance from you, maybe it's not because they're cold. Perhaps it's because, at some point, you said something that crossed the line. and they decided it's safer to keep you at the access level you're at now. The contrast between inner and outer worlds in Capricorn is not hypocrisy. It's protection. It's the only way they've found to navigate a world where few people truly understand what they value. And what about the words that cross the line? They are the signal lights, the markers that say, this person isn't ready to access who I truly am. And Capricorn respects that, even if it hurts. Now let's explore the specific patterns that Capricorns repeat around this invisible line, and how these patterns shape their relationships over time. Capricorns, often without consciously realizing it, test people. They share something vulnerable, not completely vulnerable, but enough to see how you react. They mention an important ambition. They talk about a value they take seriously. They demonstrate commitment to something that matters. And then they observe. How do you respond? Do you downplay it? Do you subtly ridicule it? Do you make a joke that minimizes what they said? Or do you acknowledge and respect it? This pattern repeats itself in all new relationships, and each response determines which level of access you have. Capricorns rarely react the first time you cross the line. They might even brush it off, thinking, maybe I'm being too sensitive. Maybe they didn't mean it that way. But when it happens again and again and again, each incident goes into that mental file. And eventually, the pattern becomes clear. This person can't help but say things that disrespect what I value. And that's where the permanent relegation from the Access League happens. There's a painful cycle that many Capricorns experience. They meet someone new and think, maybe this time it will be different. Maybe this person will truly understand me. They begin to open up cautiously. And then, the person says something, crosses the line, and Capricorn closes up again. I knew it. Why did I think it would be different? This cycle of hope followed by resignation creates an extra layer of protection with each repetition. And over time, Capricorn stops expecting people to understand. When Capricorn decides to demote someone, the decision seems sudden to outsiders. Why are you so distant all of a sudden? But for Capricorn, it wasn't sudden. It was the result of months, perhaps years, of small, accumulated observations. It was a carefully calculated decision disguised as an instinctive reaction. And once taken, it's irreversible. If you're a Capricorn, you may have already felt that sensation of always returning to the same place. Me again, being the only one who truly understands the value of commitment, consistency, and building something solid. I'm realizing again that people talk a lot, but do little. I'm shutting myself off again because it's safer than risking being misunderstood once more. And there's a part of you that wants to believe there's someone out there who will speak the language you speak, who will value what you value, who will never cross that line because they naturally understand where it is. But each time that doesn't happen, you become more convinced that maybe it's better to stop looking. I'm not going to give you answers right now on how to break this cycle. Because first, you need to see the cycle clearly. You need to acknowledge, yes, I do this. Yes, I have this line. And yes, when someone crosses it, I shut down. And that's not failure. It's emotional survival. But there is a cost. And we're going to talk about that cost now. Let's talk about what happens when this pattern extends over years. Because the invisible Capricorn line doesn't just affect individual relationships. It shapes the entire way they live. Every time Capricorn lowers someone's level of access, a small part of them closes off as well. Not just to that person, but to the possibility of intimacy in general. If that person didn't understand, who will? Over time, the accumulated pattern creates a deep-seated belief. It's safer not to expect anyone to truly understand me. It's safer to build a life where I don't need to be understood. And that sounds like independence, like strength. But internally, it feels like isolation. This pattern begins to affect fundamental life choices. Capricorns may avoid deep relationships because it always ends the same way. They may choose solitary careers where they don't have to explain their work ethic. They may structure their lives in a way that minimizes the need for vulnerability. And it works up to a point. But there is a price. And that price is the genuine human connection that Capricorn deep down desperately craves, but is so afraid to seek. Capricorns seek stability in everything. But the emotional stability they build is often based on control, not trust. If I control who has access to me, I can't be hurt. And in the long run, this creates a stable life, yes, but also a lonely one. A life where Capricorn is always present, always reliable, always strong, but never fully seen. What few people realize is the exhaustion this generates. Maintaining all these levels of access. Remembering who can know what. Constantly managing how much you open up to each person. Never being able to simply be. It's exhausting. And over time, Capricorn begins to wonder, is it worth it? All this effort to protect myself. Is it really protecting me? Or is it just keeping me isolated? And here is the most subtle, but perhaps the most devastating consequence. Capricorn may begin to choose people precisely because they will not cross the line. Not because these people understand where the line is, but because they will never get close enough to take that risk. Superficial relationships seem safer. Not because they are better, but because they are predictable, controllable, without painful surprises. And so Capricorn finds himself surrounded by people who respect his boundaries, but also never truly know them. The long-term consequence of having such a rigid invisible line is not just loneliness. It's the gradual loss of the ability to believe that someone can cross that line respectfully, that someone can truly get close without causing harm. And perhaps the saddest part is this. Capricorn may have alienated people who would have truly understood, if only they had had the chance to learn where the line was. But Capricorn doesn't give maps, doesn't give warnings. It only observes, and judges, and decides. And sometimes, the decision comes too quickly. Here is the truth that Capricorn carries silently. The invisible line doesn't exist to keep people away. It exists to protect the one thing Capricorn doesn't know how to defend any other way, the hope of being truly understood. Because if you understand Capricorn deeply, you realize they don't want to be untouchable. They want to be seen. But every time someone crosses the line, what Capricorn hears isn't just the words that were said. It's the confirmation of an old fear. You don't see me. You see a caricature. You see what's convenient to see. The central conflict for Capricorn is this. They need the invisible line to feel safe. But the line also keeps them trapped. Trapped in a cycle where they protect their essence, so much that no one can truly reach it. Where they are so careful about who they let in that they always end up alone on the inside. And the most painful part? Capricorn has an immense capacity for deep intimacy, for unwavering loyalty, for building connections that last a lifetime. But this ability can only manifest itself when they feel that the other side understands the unspoken rules. When they feel they don't need to explain why certain words hurt. And how often does this actually happen? If you're a Capricorn watching this right now, you feel the weight of this truth. You know the line exists. You know why it exists. And you know the price of maintaining it. But here's what I want you to hear. You're not too difficult, you're not too demanding. You don't expect too much from people. You simply know what you deserve. And you know that commitment, respect, and consistency aren't unreasonable demands. They're basic. The problem has never been that you have high standards. The problem is that few people live up to them. But maybe, just maybe, the line doesn't have to be so invisible. Maybe you can learn to signal where it is before someone crosses it. Maybe you can give the right people a chance to really get to know you. Not all people, but the right ones. Because if you keep the line invisible to everyone else, you also keep away those who would have walked alongside you respectfully, if only they knew how. I'm not going to promise you that recognizing this pattern will change everything. I'm not going to tell you that you should simply let your guard down or trust more. Because the truth is that your invisible line exists for valid reasons. You were hurt. You were misunderstood. You learned that protecting your essence is necessary. And that's not weakness. That's emotional intelligence. But here's what I want to invite you to consider. There's a difference between having healthy boundaries and living behind walls so high that no one can see you. There's a difference between being selective about who you let in and being so protected that even the right people can't get close. Awareness gives you a choice. You can continue operating with the invisible line exactly as it is. And for many relationships, perhaps that's the wisest course of action. But for those connections that truly matter, those people who demonstrate, through consistent actions over time, that they understand you, perhaps it would be worthwhile to make the line a little more visible. Not to tear it down, just to mark it. This is important to me. When someone says X, it sounds disrespectful. It's not about sensitivity. It's about fundamental values. This won't be easy, because making the line visible means acknowledging vulnerability. It means running the risk of someone knowingly crossing it. But it also means giving the right people a chance to avoid crossing paths. And that can make all the difference. Capricorn, you don't need to be less of yourself. You don't need to lower your standards. You don't need to accept less than you deserve. But perhaps you can learn to distinguish between people who don't understand and people who haven't yet had the chance to learn. And for those last ones, perhaps it's worth drawing the map. Now I want to hear from you. What was that phrase someone said that crossed your invisible line? That moment when you thought this person doesn't understand me, and everything changed? Or, if you're not a Capricorn, have you ever crossed that line without realizing it? And when did you realize you'd lost access to that person? Leave your comments below. Let's have a real conversation about this. And if you want to understand more about how Capricorn can maintain their boundaries without completely isolating themselves, keep an eye out for the next video. We're going to explore exactly that, the art of being protected without being lonely. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and let's continue this journey of self-discovery together. Hugs, and see you in the next video.